have an interview with Miss McCauley on Governor John Brown. This is a follow-up of previous recording.
I'll still call this James governor. It probably hasn't switched around like, I don't know where we got this idea of chief. Oh, I know we got it from the wild tribes, I know that.
And we talked about your social life there. You know, like you didn't get the permit to go to stomp dances.
Oh, uh-huh.
Then we got into church when you went down to
Florida.
Mm-hmm. Then talk a little bit about this graveyard on the other side of Holmdel, who was buried there first and second.
We both go right out here.
Right.
It's mostly around the Brown family, you know, the churches, and because they helped establish the mother church of this one down here, you know, this New Oakland. But it's Sasakwa is the mother church to this one. Let me go get an article. You can be reading it.
Okay.
Article out there, you know, that tells about the Omaha Commission. That's about your schools. And as I said, Miss Alice B. Davis was superintendent out there at 1 year, but I don't recall the year because even her daughter didn't remember the year because she's up in age too now.
Right.
And of course, in our transportation in that olden day was from the horse, buggy, wagons, you know. And of course, Milwaukee was the trading center, you know, in the early day. And medical service by the Seminoles had their own doctor. They had, and the one that I remember, his name was Dr. C.P. Lynn. They called him the Nation Doctor. That's what they referred him to. And in later years, he had a younger doctor that joined him, was Guy Banzan, and he was here until not too many years ago. I can't recall when he left here, but he built that hospital down here that. It isn't a hospital anymore, but it's right across from where the post office street is.
Right.
And that building on Mickasuck Avenue to the west on the corner there. There's 3 service stations there in this kind. Well, he built that, but later sold it to Dr. Grimes. And then I guess the city took it over and went to this hospital, the present location. Of course, the government organizations in the early days, what I understand, it was just, before statehood, I imagine, when they called the law enforcement lies horsemen, if you remember, if you probably read. And I had a picture of that as a light horseman, but I said it was kind of dim. I wouldn't know. I didn't recall I wouldn't know any of the people. And it wasn't written on this picture, you see, so, but I know of another woman that has this picture, and it's enlarged, and she may know him, but she's ill now.
Oh, I see.
And, well, our Indians were farmers, some of them, most of them, that's the way they provided for themselves. Probably just on a small scale, but they farmed.
Right.
And of course, some of them were quite prosperous. And just like this day and time, some of us are not so prosperous, and some of them are prosperous, you see.
Yeah.
And as for clothing, just like everybody else in the early time, they made their clothing and they'd buy the material, and to get the things in for the store down here, the store that the Browns had, they bought from the original trading post down there, as I told you before, from A.J. Brown, and Governor Brown bought this store. Well, they'd bring their stuff overland from Eufaula, the nearest railroad then. And they had, it was a general mercantile store. They had everything, groceries and dry goods and implements of all kinds. And they even had the coffins to put the people away with, you see.
Did they usually do all the trading with money, or did they trade for other stuff?
Well, they used money, but sometimes, if we say credit, they had what they call, if I can remember, they had issued paper, and they called it a due bill. Up into the, when I guess the Seminoles got their money annually. I don't know when. I don't recall how they did, but they had payments, And they extended this company, credit to them. Mm-hmm. And if you, I think there's one of those, they call it script, I guess what they call it. Well, I know of a man here, if he still has it, if he hadn't turned it over to somebody, his father, A.M. Saran, was an employee of this store, and he kept some of these, and of course, he's been gone now several years, but he has a son here, and I might ask him sometime if he has, but I'd just like to see it.
I would too.
I've seen them, but I can't remember.
Right.
I can't remember what they look like, but it was kind of like a check.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recall, because at that day and time, I was just a child, and those things I wasn't interested in, Well, of course, your housing, constructions was of different variety, mostly logs. I don't recall any of our Indians or any teepees in Seminole County. We didn't have, but they did have log cabins because we come from the southeast,
Right.
And they have these little log houses and maybe 1 or 2 rooms with a lean-to, and a porch. That's the original kind of homes that they lived in. Some of them were bigger according to the size of the family, I would think.
Did the man of the house build this by himself, or did they have some kind of gathering?
Well, that I don't know. I imagine he would, if he had friends, I would think that they would come and help him, because that's the way the church people did. If one needed help, they'd all go to him, and then if he needed help, they'd come to him. And they'd all come to one another's and help one another. That's, in my day and time, is what I recall.
Right.
When, as I was young, as I said, there's a lot of things that took place of significance that I didn't realize what they were, But, of course, as I told you, I was brought up in the church, and that's the way the Christian people did, help one another.
You think that as far as church go, the members are fading away a little bit these days? It's not as strong as it used to be?
Those that are in the church are strong as they ever were, but as you say, it's just like everything else. I think that the younger ones have too many other things going, and they're not perhaps not as conscientious about their religion as the older people were. The older people were sincere, and that was their life, their church life. Of course, just like any other race of people, there's some that were, as I said, religious religious, and they were faithful to their religion when it come easy. And then we had some that during the summertime when the dances were going on, they would go back and go to the dances. And we have that right now, this day and time.
Right.
And as I said, they're not dedicated Christians, or they wouldn't do that.
I remember when I was a child, they used to, if we were outside, they used to come after us with a switch. They don't do it these days.
No, they don't. And they had the men of the church, proper ones, the deacons usually. They didn't so much as they wanted you to, they were strict. They wanted you to behave on the church premises and to take in the services. And this day and time, it's everybody has an automobile, and the children out there sitting in the cars listening to the radios and things like that. And as I said, all this stems from the home training, you know. It comes from your home training. And if you can see that they're not training their young ones as they should.
Right.
And personal recollections. Well, when did I arrive in Oklahoma? I think I arrived here in 1899, but I was born here in Wewoka. And the site I know, but the building has been torn down. And where did we come from? Well, the grandfather, they were born over at Fort Gibson there, but his father and mother came from Florida. The father of my great-grandfather was a Scotsman. He was a doctor, and he married a full-blood Indian woman. And it seems as though that they told me that as a girl, she was not very well, and the parents said, if you can make her well, you can have her. And that's the way she became his wife and raised a large family. They were all over here born at Fort Gibson. And later on, they came to what is Seminole County now. But from what I understand, that they were located down a little farther from Kanawha, down that way, mostly at which would be Potawatomi County now, I guess. But then later, as the time went on, they come to Sassafra. And then that's where the oldest one, who was John F. Brown, in later time became the governor, which they call chiefs now. They did call him governor, and there was another name that you remember what they called John Brown, the young John Brown?
No, the only thing I can recollect is they called him governor.
Well, no, I mean the young.
A.J.?
No, the young John that was here just recently. That preceded Terry followed.
Oh, I sure don't.
There was a name that they called him, but I can't recall what it was. Anyway, then the chiefs were elected, and the way they voted, what they tell me, for one person, they just line up on one side, just like you would choosing up for a game, you know. Those on one side was for so-and-so, and those on this other side was for their candidate, or whatever you might call them.
You mean it wasn't decided by a group of people, it was just decided by a few?
Well, those that would come there to vote, and only the men could vote, see. It's just been recently that the women could vote for their chief. And we had our first election, the Seminole had their first election when they elected Terry Walker. And the women got to vote in that one, and we voted by ballot.
Well, how did this Davis, how did she get elected?
Well, she was appointed by the president again. They were by appointments, you see. in Washington. And they had a specific duty for her to do, you know, when they elected her. But she stayed, I don't recall how long she was governor, but, you know, I showed you the picture when they,
Right.
when she was, not, I mean, what do you call them, put in office.
Right.
And her family, you know, I showed the picture. I showed you those pictures. They were by appointments from Washington.
Was there only one, these Brown, were they brothers? Or was there
Yes.
just only one?
No, they were brothers. It come like this. Governor Brown, John S. Brown, he was the governor. He was the oldest of the family. And the doctor, his father, died early in life. And, I mean, they were children, were young. Well, the governor then left it up to him to help his family, his brothers and sisters. And he sent them to school, got them in school. And then my grandfather, which was down the line from him, he wasn't the next one. They had some sisters between the governor and A.J. But they became partners. And he took care of this trading post here, and there was a big one in Sasakwa too. And he took care of that one over there. It was first, now if you remember, there's a marker out there where it says the mansion of Governor Brown, like you're going to Ada.
Right.
Well, the first store was there. But when the railroad come through, I'm sure that was the reason, they moved it to the present side of Sasakwa. And that store burned in later years, in the 20s, I guess, because Governor Brown died, I think, in 1918, and my grandfather died in 1917. Then, of course, his sons, Louis Brown, who later became a preacher, was ordained a preacher to the ministry. He took over. He was the ones that then he made several trips to Florida too, in behalf, you know, of the Indian people. And he brought a group up here at one time. It was a group. I mean, it wasn't just 2 or 3. It was a group of them. And talking about the church, my father was my grandfather. My father died while we were young, and my grandfather then took over and raised his grandchildren. But I was with him from the time I was. Then, as I told you before, that he was interested in the people in Florida. He had made several trips down there. And he always took somebody that showed more Indian than he, or that could talk the different languages that the Indians spoke down there in Florida. The Miccosukee language especially, and he took a man from the north part of the county up here, which name was W.L. Joseph. And then a man named Clarence, not Clarence Wesley, but John Wesley. I'm thinking about Clarence Wesley. We have one over here in the Cherokee country, you know, the Creek man. He's over there with the Cherokees. But this man was named John Wesley. And did I show you those pictures? I didn't show you. Did I show you
Yes.
those pictures?
Mm-hmm.
And on about the 4th trip, I guess it was, 3rd or 4th trip, then he took his group of his church members, and there was the 2 other preachers and their wives, and his sister, Miss Alice B. Davis, and she had her daughter, Mrs. W.S. Key. Irene Davis was her name, but she later was Mrs. W.S. Key. And then he had a ward. Her name was Lizzie Bruner. She went along. And of course, I went along with my grandparents everywhere they went, and so I was included in this. Not as just to be going, I guess, just to take his family, I imagine is the way it was. Because I was quite young. And they made this trip down there, and after we got there, why, the Indians would only come so far from a little town, and we had to then meet them halfway, as we said. Wasn't halfway by actually, but I mean, we had to make that gesture, you know.
Right.
And we went in wagons to this place where they would come and were willing to meet us. And as I told you, I didn't know how long we stayed down. It seemed like a long time to me. It might have been 10 days, I don't know. Out in this camp, you know, out in the wilderness, I'd call it.
Right.
Everglades, maybe it was. I don't know what it was, but anyway, it was out there where we met the Indians. And the whole trip, I would imagine, as I said, I don't recall how long it was. I recall some of the incidents on the way down there and on the way back. But we went by rail, train. And I have the pictures, you know, of this group in several different, you know.
Then you say Liz Brennan was the second one buried out here in the local
Yes,
cemetery?
she was the second one. After this, the city bought this present Oakwood Cemetery out here at this location. But she was the one that made this trip with the people down Florida, you know. She was the second one to be buried there. The first one was a little boy who was killed by a horse. And she was the one that helped him select the lots that he bought for the family, you know. And the gravestone, you can tell, the date is on it out there. This was her allotment right here, right on that border of Seminole Nation and the Creek Nation where they joined, which is Muskogee Avenue out here. Well, her allotment, this is her homestead here, but there was the surface, you know, and she donated the land to the church out here.
Who was this Reverend George Scott?
Well, he was a preacher out here, and he was the one that made the trip to Florida also with his wife. And later on, they established that church out there on the highway from Holdenville to the Mission. This church out here, you know what I mean, Middle Creek.
Right.
Too.
Who was this Ari Harbor?
Oh, Mrs. Ari Harbor is the daughter of John F. Brown. She's not the only living one, but she's the oldest living of his children. And what was it I asked you to go see her about? I forgot what it was.
I don't either. I got a question mark by it, but I don't know what it was.
There's something I said you might find out something about from her. I don't remember. But she is Governor Brown's daughter.
Did you say this was one of the oldest houses in Wewoka? The one you stayed in?
The one I'm living in?
Yes, ma'am.
It's one of the oldest. It's not the oldest, but I guess there might be one or two others that are older.
That's about all I have to ask you. And,
well, I hope that I'll help you in any way that I can. I know it's not very plain, but as I said, there's some of it that is just what I remember.
right.
And I'm sure there are a lot of other things that were more important, but that's just like I recall it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.